We now welcome on Mirin Fader. She's a staff writer at The Ringer and author of the new Giannis biography, Giannis, The Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. The book is available August 10th, in just a week here. And we were just saying it before we got live on air here, but I just want to say it again. Absolutely amazing job with the book. Dylan and I both just read it and finished it in the last few days, and really just amazing cover to cover. So thanks for joining us, and thank you for writing such an excellent book.
Oh, thank you for such a kind intro and kind words. I'm really happy to be here.
Of course. So watching coming on the tail end of the Bucks run through the playoffs, Giannis's insane performance in the finals. How much were you pulling for the Bucks? And was them winning the greatest book promotion you could have ever imagined?
Yes. And I became a Bucks fan. I know it's bad to say. We're not supposed to cheer in the press box, but I was doing a whole lot more than cheering. I was screaming. I was nervous. I was scared. I was happy. I felt every emotion, and I haven't felt that way in a long time watching a game. I don't know if just doing this as a job has kind of I don't know, made that a little less than it used to be growing up. But yeah, I was just like, please win. The Nets series just had me on edge every single game. And of course, I could have never predicted that they would win. You guys read the book. There's a lot in the book about the Bucks' struggles of never being able to break through. And so best promotion a girl could ask for, but I'm definitely just shocked.
I honestly, reading it with the context of them winning, kind of all of it feels like a nice closeout. Like it's all building up to this ending that has already happened. Like, oh, will they or won't they? Oh, the early seasons that Giannis was on the team when they struggled so much, and all of it was just leading up to this final outcome that just happened. So it seemed like the universe was in your favor for all this. So
thank you, universe. Thank you.
Yeah, it honestly felt a bit odd reading the book, because on one hand, like Dylan said, knowing the ending, knowing that he will become a finals MVP champion, there were times where I was reading the book and thinking, like, this man is destined for this. It feels like destiny that he'll land in Milwaukee, end up with this sort of career and everything else, but at the same time defying all the odds. Like, he wasn't destined at all. He grew up in poverty in Greece, was literally starving, and it wasn't obvious at all that he would become who he was. So it was kind of just a weird dichotomy with both of those things being true at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's why Milwaukee fans love him so much, because he wasn't supposed to be here. They love the idea of somebody being a late bloomer and really having to work their ass off to get to where they are, I mean, what fun would it be if he was a top prospect at age 13, destined for everything? It's just so sweet that this guy, through sheer luck and perseverance, ends up not only winning a championship, but legit saving the franchise. People forget Milwaukee almost left Milwaukee. Giannis literally kept them in the city of Milwaukee. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. And that last year, there was so much speculation about what he was going to do, if he was going to stay, all that. And he made it a point that he wanted to stay, and he wanted to stand by the organization that took a chance on him. I think there's a lot in the book. You have a portion of it that goes into the history of Milwaukee, kind of some of the sports related traumas that they've endured with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar leaving, just difficulty with the franchise in general. Did Giannis take much of that into account? Was he aware of the history of the team, of the city, and did he take that into account with his decision to stay?
I think when he first got there, he definitely wasn't, he didn't even know who OJ Mayo was, let alone the grades. And it's funny because back in Greece, people would come up to him and say, "You're like Dr. J." And he had no idea who Dr. J was. So he definitely didn't know Kareem back then. But, I'm not sure if that was on his mind all these years later when he was thinking of his decision, but he was certainly very aware of those decades old wounds as he was, staying and solidifying himself as a superstar. Because, you know, Giannis is like the first guy in a really long time to come to Milwaukee and say something positive about this city. These people are so used to getting ripped on. And here is Giannis saying like, no, you guys are wonderful. This place is wonderful. And so I think that he was just very aware of how people had treated Milwaukee fans for so long and how frustrating it was to love a team that was just so mediocre.
Yeah. And it's also interesting. And one of the things that you write in the book too, is that like Milwaukee was kind of the perfect city for Giannis as well. The GM at the time, John Hammond, you talk about like how he really spent time with the players, how the team was in a position where they were willing to take a chance on him and give him playing time and things like that. Do you think Giannis's career would have gone differently if he had landed in a bigger market or Atlanta like he was kind of supposed to in a way?
Yeah, I definitely think it would have gone differently. I mean, I do think because of Giannis's work ethic, like he would have been successful no matter what, but I don't know how successful. I mean, the way that the Bucks treated him that rookie year was almost like a son,
Mm.
I mean, you just don't see that in the NBA where front offices teach you how to drive and text you late at night, make sure you're not lonely, or, lecture you like, don't get in the car with strangers, just real like sweet care and TLC. And you just don't get that these days. And I think that Giannis, this to me shows why we should give prospects time to develop, because in today's market, like maybe they would have thrown him into the G League, right? But
Mm-hmm.
he got to play and learn on the fly because they were so terrible. So everyone always talks about like, oh, Giannis thrived there because small town, perfect place. I think he thrived because they were so bad and he got to get experience. There's a benefit of winning 15 games. You get to get in the starting lineup.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny. So many of the times where you were like, oh, Giannis played like one of his best games up to that point, or like kind of showed the world who he was in this game or that game, but they still lost like 102-97. Like that was always like the last phrase of the sentence.
No, I
But
have
they
to switch
still
it up.
lost.
There's only so many ways you can be like the team was struggling, like or like they came up short again, it's just like such a struggle.
Yeah. Well, and it's fun. I mean, it's funny some of the details that in the early seasons that you go into about like the pastors playing pickup at like lunch.
Yes.
And just like all the stuff. Like I almost wonder if like Giannis, like just the fact that it was a lower level organization in a mid-tier city, they didn't have all the bells and whistles. Like if he got drafted by the Miami Heat, his brain might have exploded. Like, because the facilities would be so nice, Miami's so nice. Like it almost was like a very good transition.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, the place you just mentioned where the priest would play pickup was this practice center attached to a church, and it was so run down. Like Chris Middleton injured himself there because the leaky roof, and the place that they played their games, the Bradley Center, was so frigid. But Giannis is like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've ever seen. This is just amazing, because from where he's coming from, this is a step up. So you're right, like if he went to a flashy city, I think it would just be insane. I mean, the image that's stands out to me was when Atlanta was really interested in him. And I spoke with the then GM Danny Ferry, and he was describing Giannis coming into, I think it was called Phillips Arena at the time, I'm not sure, wherever the Hawks played. And Giannis just crying. He's just, the tears are coming down standing on this court. It's the nicest thing he's ever seen, I mean, the Bucks did not, the precursor was not like Pfizer for him. So yeah, I mean, who's to say what would happen? But I think that's why I really loved working on this, because I feel like every single thing that happens, it almost doesn't happen, right? Like he starts late, he has this tough upbringing, he doesn't have papers, he can't play for the top teams, miraculously he's drafted, they're terrible, he gets to play. There's like all these things that happen that are just like pure circumstance that makes him into what he is.
Yeah. And speaking of, just real quick, because this is about something that Dylan and I separately had on our notes leading up to the interview, you just touched on Giannis being in Atlanta, going to Phillips Arena, being that close to almost becoming an Atlanta Hawk. Do you think there should be like a trigger warning for Atlanta Hawks fans in reading the book, that you should put something at the start between them missing out on him on the draft, and then the whole Nate McMillan like Rising Stars challenge, him holding a grudge against him? Like, I live in Atlanta. I might not tell my friends to read the book. They're gonna be too sad.
Oh, you got to send them the trigger warning.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. So I don't know. Should I spoil the Nate McMillan anecdote? Give him a little tease, rip the Band-Aid off?
It's a pretty good tease. Yeah.
Should we do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do it. The trigger warning's been said.
Yes.
We gave you a trigger warning. If it's too much, I'm sorry. You know to not listen to the pod at this point, my Hawks fans. Basically, Giannis is really hyped to play in this Rising Stars game. He's like, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity. And while all of the other players are not taking it as serious, they just want to have fun, Giannis is sprinting like this is a real game. And he finds himself on the bench. Nate McMillan has forgotten about him. Nate is the coach of his team. Andre Drummond is playing really well. And Giannis just is looking at Nate longingly, like, put me in the game, and then he says to Nate, like, but coach, what about me? And it's this adorable, like, remember me, I'm still on the bench, put me in, coach. But it isn't this arrogant, like, what the hell, like, put me in the game, So after the game, Giannis is fuming. He goes up to Josh Oppenheimer and he's like, you'll never believe what Nate McMillan did. He sat me on purpose. And Josh Oppenheimer, the Bucks coach, is like, it's okay. Like, it'll be fine. I was like, no, he will pay for this. And then Nate, I talked with Nate as well. And he's like, honestly, I wasn't keeping track. I lost control. Andre was good. And Giannis told me I'll be back, like as it, like an empty threat, like I'll be back. And so Nate told me, he's like, I wonder if Giannis still remembers that. Every time I play against him, I think, does he remember that? I'm like, Nate, actually, yes, he does.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my God, he's just sitting before the Eastern Conference Finals, just thinking back to that moment of the Rising Stars.
Just like, I see you, Nate. Like, I'm not forgetting that.
That was the fuel that he needed. It's so funny, like, with Giannis, because like there's such an interesting dynamic between like his innocence coming into the league and like just this, like you said, he's just this nice little cute kid, and then just on a quick flip, he'll switch into like a Kobe Mamba mentality, like super determined, like holding a grudge type person. And it's so interesting that he is able to switch back and forth between those two like versions of himself so easily.
And I think also, like, he's just so complex in the same way that he vacillates between those two things really quickly. I think he does the same thing, being a goofball and then being insanely prophetic and insightful. Like, he's just like so funny and then so serious. And I think he's the most compelling NBA player. There's just not somebody with the combination of personality and game and just versatility in terms of what he does on the court and off the court. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Speaking of that sort of like childish kind of bubbly personality that Giannis has today, but especially had when he came into the league, you wrote about one story where he was screaming something along the lines of, I'm Michael Jordan, I'm Michael Jordan. And a teammate of him getting upset and being like, who the hell is this kid? And just getting severely annoyed by him. Were there more stories of those kinds of teammates that, like, even though Giannis was lovable, just like couldn't really put up with that young, childish, bubbly personality of his?
You know what? It was really only Miroslav, whose last name I am gonna butcher, and I Radulic. We're gonna forgive me on this, and unless you have
I avoided it.
You're forgiven because we avoided it entirely. Yeah.
Okay, I somebody had to go for it. Okay, so Miroslav, hated him, but there really wasn't anyone else. I was really surprised, and to be quite honest with you, I was a little nervous at first, because if you're interviewing 221 people and they all say positive things about someone, like, what kind of book is that, Yeah. So but then I was like, okay, but there's still other complex things. He it's okay that he's beloved. In fact, him being beloved actually makes this make sense and work. But yeah, it really was only Miroslav. Like a lot of them just liked him so much because it would be one thing if you're just annoying, but he worked so hard that they had
Yeah.
no choice but to respect him. It's not like he showed up like, whatever, I'm just going to bounce through layup lines. Like he was a really, really hard worker. It was hard to not like him.
Yeah. And I mean, by all accounts, like just it was his genuine self. Like it wasn't
Yeah,
like, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so speaking of, like you said, 200 interviews, like you said, a lot of them overwhelmingly positive. I mean, that's going into the history of Giannis and like throughout his entire life. Were there any interviews that you did specifically that really stood out as really insightful or just very interesting, or even just the characters that you ran into, like from some old Greek coach from Giannis's middle school days? Or
Yeah, I mean, the first one that came to mind was Raman Rana, who was one of his childhood best friends. And um, Rana was just great because, first of all, they were so close, but also they were both people of color on a majority white Phil Athletico's team. And Rana was able to share some experiences of like bonding with Giannis because both of them were people of color, and just hearing how, you know, racist a lot of people were towards Giannis was really important to me, because I think people gloss over that aspect of his life story, or they just kind of don't know it because it just hasn't been told as much in depth. So I thought that was really fascinating. The other one I thought was interesting was Spiros Velianatis, the man that discovered Giannis, and discovering that he has a rift with the family and he wants to be paid. What I thought was really important, because Spiros, people know that name. That's like the one character people know, but people have no idea that there's this feud behind the scenes. And I think, as I say in the book, like Spiros really embellishes the story a lot. I really don't believe that at 13 years old, Giannis playing tag, running around, made Spiros think he saw Mozart. I don't.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't. I give Spiros credit, but I think he's an embellisher. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting to just have that in there and say, like, look, this guy is demanding money. It's not this fairy tale you think it is. He's like upset with the family. So that was interesting for me to learn about. And he was just so angry. He was so angry. I mean, he
Really?
started like yeah, his tone with me got really testy because I was just asking questions and he was just so annoyed with Giannis, and I was like, okay. So that was interesting. And then I think finally, I really appreciated talking with Giannis's mom, because she doesn't really talk to a lot of people, and I could see first glance at the way that, she's not really as comfortable talking to strangers. She was sitting very far from me on the couch at first. And it wasn't until like 40 minutes in did she handed me an Altoid, and I felt like I like crossed
Yeah.
some boundary, And so she was the one that actually took me to Giannis and was like, Giannis, talk to her. So that
Really?
was, yeah, so that was really cool. And just having her quotes in there about how, like, yeah, I worked in important places in Nigeria, and when I got to Greece, they were like, this doesn't matter. Because again, I think we have put this fairy tale over Giannis and his family, like rags to riches, American dream, that it's like they really had a hard time. And it's not this great, I mean, it is a great story, but it's not this like Disney movie. So I really enjoyed those three interviews.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the first one that you mentioned, and speaking with Rana, his friend, I gotta say personally that you speaking to kind of the racism that Giannis confronted, all the way from like the names that he was shouted at while playing in Greece to Golden Dawn, which I had never heard of, but like this racist terrorist organization, neo-Nazi group that literally threatened Giannis up until the point he was in the NBA, was like
Right.
something that I knew nothing about going into the book, and was just like wildly illuminating.
Mhm.
And I know we're short on time here, but was that sort of the same experience for you in writing the book? Like, did you know that you were going to be confronting all that when you took decided to go forward with the Giannis biography, or what was it like kind of unfolding that story?
Yeah, like you, I literally never heard of Golden Dawn before. And I just was like floored. I kept watching Greek documentaries on this group. It was so chilling. It was so disgusting. And it was really important for me to talk with other Black migrants. And, I didn't originally set out to do that, but I was like, in order for me to understand what Giannis's experience was like, I need to talk with other Black Greek people to understand what their experiences were like. The goal for me was like, talk to as many people as possible, try to understand the context, because if you don't have that kind of context, it's not going to make sense how improbable Giannis's story was, because I think if he did not get his citizenship fast tracked because the Greek government knew he was going to be in the NBA, he might end up like any of these other Black migrants that are running from Golden Dawn. He could easily be like them today. One of them that I charted the journey of throughout the book, Emmanuel Godwin, is still at the place trying to get papers every morning at 4 a.m. And like, he didn't get to ascend the way that Giannis has. So I think it surprised me that there's so much current day racism there. I certainly had an inkling that there would be racism when he was growing up, in the 90s and early 2000s, but to see murals of Giannis right now as he's a national hero be desecrated with swastikas, that was a surprise to me, because you could not pick a more like dignified person to represent your country, and Giannis professes his love for Greece all the time, and so it's just, it's jarring but not quite unsurprising that they don't always embrace him, and tons do. I that's the key thing I want people to take away from this book, is that were there white Greek people that were awesome to him and took care of him and gave him food and were compassionate on rent and fixed him a hot plate and got him Gatorade? 100%. And we list a lot of them that people have never heard of. Were there also this terrorist group going through the neighborhoods, scouring for people like Giannis and like his family? Police walking around ready to deport people who look like them? Absolutely. People saying racist things at him during games? Absolutely. So I think for me, the challenge as a writer was like, how do you hold both of these at one time? How do you show a really balanced view that shows, okay, it's not like Giannis goes out of his house and he's terrified, but when he sees a Golden Dawn person, he books it the other way because he knows what can happen. So it's just trying to be as accurate as possible, and that really comes from the 221 interviews that we've talked about. So
yeah, and I would again encourage people to read the book to learn more about this, because everything you're saying there, I think you did a phenomenal job, and that part was just wildly illuminating. So
thank you.
Well, once again, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. I'm sure your schedule is super busy. Before we close out, I really quickly wanted to just go over, so Giannis, when he comes into the league, he's 18 years old. He can hardly bench the bar, let alone any weights on it. And now he is literally a Greek god. He is a sculpted Greek god. Did you happen to get any workout tips? Like, I'm trying to get my bench up, did you happen to get any in those 221 interviews?
Oh my God, me too. Well, I know, well, one thing he does that I think is, really cool. He does a lot of like the sled stuff. He'll like push, like Mariah, his girlfriend, will be on the sled and he'll like push her. And so it makes his workouts fun. So I got to watch him do that. I'm trying to think of other. Well, if you want to get mean like Giannis, you can practice your scowl in the mirror after you bench press. I think that
was the next question we wanted to ask. Yes, I'm so glad you thought
this is actually great. This worked out perfectly.
I had it highlighted in our notes. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So he, like you're saying, bench press and work on his scowl, just like in a mirror, like like to see how good he could get it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? How have you done? Has he perfected it?
I think
my God.
Yeah. I mean, the scowl that he gave after the alley-oop dunk in game 5.
Yeah.
To just put it away, that was an all-time scowl. That's a man who practices scowl.
Iconic. He just dead in he knew exactly where the camera was.
Yeah.
I mean, the funniest part is like, okay, to look in the mirror and practice the scowl is like funny on its own. But the way that he would like do like 10 reps of something and then rush to the mirror as if it's going to show up, you know, like let me just check the biceps, you know, and then like do his angry grunt face. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so triggered. I haven't been to the gym since pre-pandemic. But yeah, I see the guys do it. Apparently this is a thing. You would know more than me. But yeah, it gives me hope what you guys can practice your scowl if you play pickup.
Well, so before we let you go, real quick, we have been practicing our scowl. We were wondering if you could pick between JMO and I who has the better scowl.
Let's go. Oh
and as the Giannis expert, all right, Dylan, you want to go first?
All right. Yeah, I'll go first. All right.
That was pretty good. All right.
I had to
and then you can compare us to Giannis. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Kind of more constipated there than angry.
Dylan's was a little fiercer. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, okay.
I think
I
it was
my
in
mouth to a tiny little.
Yeah, your mouth was like this, and Dylan went for the nose. It's all about the nose. It was a real scrunchy.
Yeah.
All right.
But there's time to practice. Look, Giannis transformed. You can transform.
Yeah. There's hope for all of us.
Yeah. Among the many things you can learn in Giannis, the improbable rise of an NBA MVP, is that your snarl can get better in time.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mirin. I know we went over your time here, and I know you're very busy, but thank you so much for taking the time. And this was a blast. It was a blast reading the book, and we really appreciate it.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this, and this competition at the end just made my entire week. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for being the most fun, most creative podcast. It's truly appreciated.
Wow.
There we go.
You're on quite the tour right now.
So yeah, that's high praise considering you've been on
praise.
900 podcasts, I think, or will be in the next week.
And seriously, everybody who's listening to this, go get this book. It's great. You will fly through it. Really great job. Thank you so much for taking the time again. This was a ton of fun.
Thank you.